All right, hello there, everyone. My name is Emily Heald. I am the Water Program Coordinator at the North Lakeland Discovery Center here in beautiful Manitowish Waters, Vilas County. And I'm here today to give you an update on aquatic invasive species and lake management planning for the Manitowish Chain. It has been a unique year in many ways, and with that comes unique challenges. So I just wanted to update you on some of the happenings on your lakes. And so normally I would do this presentation for you all at the annual meeting here at the Discovery Center, but unfortunately due to COVID-19 we had to cancel that, and so I still want to keep you all informed, and that's what we're going to be doing here. So this summer, like I said, we had some unique challenges come up, and one of those challenges is that I was only able to hire one summer assistant, but I hired the best one possible. His name's Jared Sheff. He just graduated from Denison University just this spring. He majored in biology. He played football. He's what I'm going to be calling my water program assistant. So he's getting an upgrade because he was an intern last year, and this year he's back. He's taking on more responsibility. So I'm giving him some tasks that I used to handle, and then I'm also doing a lot of things that interns normally do. So it's working out for the most part. It's a lot of work, but we are doing our best. So let's jump into what's going on in the chain here. So management planning. Remember, management planning, that's the process where we record a ton of data out on the lake. So anything you can think of in the lake, we're going to put a number on it. And then we use all of that information to give guidance on how to keep our lakes as healthy as possible for as long as possible. And this process is starting to wrap up, and we have finalized a comprehensive management plan for the entire chain, and that includes the 3 lakes that are below the dam, and that has turned into a very large document. And so I have copies of that available if you do computers and digitally. I have copies of that available online where you can email me for a link to those. I know the Lake Association is also going to be putting that information on their website soon, so make sure you check back there. If you are more into physical copies, I have a large 3-inch binder here that has copies of it here at Discovery Center. Just let me know ahead of time if you want to pick it up. And then we're also going to be putting another hard copy at the library too, so it's accessible in a lot of different places. Each lake, through that management planning process, has information on extensive plant surveys that we've done. There's information on nutrients, clarity, oxygen, fish habitat, shoreline development, watershed assessment, so that's how much land area drains into each lake. There are updated depth maps, there's information on aquatic invasive species, and more. So just to give you an example of the different information that you can have, these are obviously just snippets. Each lake has about 30 pages of information on it. You can look at, just Spider Lake, for example, information on lake morphology, different plants that are growing in there, water quality, and then there are all kinds of cool little maps in there. This one's about where plants are growing most densely on Spider Lake. So you can look at your favorite lake on the chain, you can look at the one you live on, you can look at whatever you want there. It's all available for you. Just let me know if you want to see it. So a big part of the work that we do, as you all know, in the early summer is to search for invasive species, especially curly-leaf pondweed. That's the main invasive species of concern out there. And the chain is just a lot of water to cover. And so because of that, we have to split it with a consulting company. We use Onterra. This is the name that you've probably heard before. It's the consulting company that we work with. They helped us to survey Rest, Stone, Fawn, Spider, Manitowish Island lakes, as well as Rice Creek and the Rest Stone Channel. And then Discovery Center did Clear, Little Star, Alder, Wild Rice, the Trout River. And then below the dam in the Manitowish River, we had volunteer assistance this year to help us out just because we're so low staffed this year. But we were able to monitor all the waters of the chain and then some. And here was a beautiful day when we were out on the Manitowish River. So just a reminder of what curly-leaf pondweed looks like, and then this is how large curly-leaf pondweed can grow compared to your average-sized Jared. So remember, curly-leaf pondweed, it has those, it has a curly leaf, just like the name says. It's kind of like a lasagna noodle-shaped leaf, and along the leaf edges, it's very spiky. So if you were to run your hands along the side or your fingers along the side of the leaves here, it would feel very abrasive, and that's because it has what are called serrated leaf edges. Once it's in the water, it can be this really pretty, vibrant, bright green here. Curlyleaf pondweed really likes cold water. It does not like warm water, and so it's dead in most of the parts of the lake by now, likely, but you can still keep an eye out for it. So, you know, plant growth varies from year to year. This year was definitely no exception. So, you know, we had a really cold spring, and then we had rapid warming, and so this year plants were growing a lot lower in the water column than usual, and it made survey work really difficult, and so we had to utilize a lot of different things like snorkeling and underwater camera work frequently. And working with curlyleaf pondweed, it's always this sort of delicate balance between, you know, you want to wait long enough to be able to see the plants from the surface. You want them to be as high as possible, but you can't wait too long because curlyleaf pondweed will then produce what are called turions. Those are the reproductive vegetative buds that it uses to reproduce. And you want to be able to survey and remove curlyleaf pondweed before it starts producing those buds, because then in that case it's just going to kind of spread more. I hope that makes sense the way I'm describing it. You want to survey it and pull it before it's able to spread more. So these are the results that we've had from surveys. I want to draw your attention to a few areas. Notice on Rest Lake this year we did not find any curlyleaf pondweed. That's awesome. We only found one plant last year. The Spider Island Channel, if you zoom in on that, you can see there are only a few sparse plants growing here. We did not find any large colonies. It was just a lot of really spread out single plants. Rice Creek, I know this looks like it's much less dense compared to usual years. But just keep in mind that we weren't able to fully survey that area because the flow rate was very high and curlyleaf pondweed was pretty much growing like flat against the bottom of the creek there because the current was pushing it down. So most of Rice Creek had to be surveyed with an underwater camera. Island Lake, I think that these 2 points here on Island Lake were probably a little bit deceptive this year. We did find several plants growing there. And then what I really want to talk about that I'm going to show you in a little bit here, Fawn Lake. Remember we discovered curlyleaf pondweed on Fawn Lake a few years ago, and Fawn is really like an especially good location for curlyleaf to grow and thrive. It's kind of mucky. It has a little bit of a flow through it as the water is moving between stone and clear, and curlyleaf pondweed unfortunately really enjoys those conditions. So we've been keeping an eye on it, and we are definitely managing it. This year it was definitely less compared to last year, but we still had to do quite a bit of work out there. I also found a floating fragment of curlyleaf pondweed on Alder Lake. I found it right here where this little pin indicates on the southwest end of Alder Lake, and this is the small fragment that I found. It did not have roots on it, and so it is really possible that it could have been transported on a boat that someone had launched from a different part of the lake, but, you know, it's really important that we're still vigilant. If it did come from a rooted plant, the sooner we find the plants, the better, because we can pull them before they spread too much. We scoured this whole area, and we also scoured the Trout River just south of it. It was a strong south wind before this. And so we were thinking if it'd be anywhere besides the lake, it'd probably be south of that. To no avail. So we did not find any rooted plants. Again, it could be that it came in on a boat, but we're not sure. And so if you live on Alder Lake or if you frequent it often, if you could give us a hand by watching out for curlyleaf pondweed there, I would very much appreciate it. So again, with Fawn Lake, that warranted the use of DASH, that stands for Diver Assisted Suction. I did mention this at last year's meeting that this was likely to be a possibility, and so the Manitowish Waters Lakes Association did fund it this year. It's a more expensive method of removal, but it's very efficient. It's basically like a big underwater vacuum. We only did this on Fawn. It's the only area with enough curlyleaf pondweed to warrant something like this. The rest we removed by hand with snorkeling. Hopefully next year we won't need to use DASH on Fawn, but it's just something that we're going to have to keep an eye on and take it year by year. So Jared and I pulled the rest of the curlyleaf pondweed by hand, just as a reminder what a dive flag looks like. So if you see a flag like this anywhere in the water, you should be staying about 200 feet away from it because it means that someone is under the surface. Island Lake, like I said, it had several plants. The Spider Island Channel is looking really, really good. Remember, this was an area that had been chemically treated in the past. There is still curlyleaf pondweed growing sporadically around there, but much less than in past years. Fawn Lake had some smaller patches of curlyleaf north of where they used the dash unit, and we pulled those. Stone had a small plant at the entrance to Fawn, kind of right in those red and green buoys. We found that and pulled it. And then we also went to Stone and double-checked where we found curlyleaf in 2019, and we did find several plants sporadically on Stone as well. Those are, that's a good example of plants that were not necessarily visible from the surface, but once we got down there and we snorkeled around, we were able to find and remove several plants. The Rest Stone Channel, so the Manitowish River between Rest and Stone, that had plants, curlyleaf pondweed, for the first time in years. So that was first found in the channel in 2013. But remember, those vegetative buds, those turions that curlyleaf pondweed produces, those can remain viable for over 7 years. And so it's not super surprising that we did find curlyleaf there. We found several plants and we removed it. And that location, because so many boats drive by, it was actually a really good location to do outreach. A lot of people asked what we were doing. A lot of people made jokes that we were diving for Dillinger's lost treasure, which was pretty funny, but it was also really good to have a lot of conversations with people about invasive species as well. So curlyleaf aside, the other major invasive species that we work with is purple loosestrife. And now we usually raise beetles that eat only purple loosestrife. And those little guys, you can see all the damage that they do to the plants over here. They're helping us to combat purple loosestrife without the use of chemicals. But this year, the 7th graders from North Lakeland, who usually help us to set up the project, they weren't available due to COVID-19. And then with my staffing restrictions, rearing beetles just wasn't in the cards this year, but we knew we still wanted to do something. And so what we did instead was we collected beetles from an area where they're doing really well up in Iron County. And then instead of rearing them, we just dropped them directly onto the sites that need it the most. And so those sites are Rice Creek, the Manitowish River, and Wild Rice Lake. So hopefully they're still able to go out there and do some damage. And just as a reminder, here's what purple loosestrife looks like. It grows to be kind of bushy, like it here on the left, with these pretty purple flowers that'll grow. You can see they grow really close to the stem, like almost right on the stem. I just saw my first purple loosestrife blooming in Minocqua on July 10th. That's really early. For most of the purple loosestrife plants, it's going to be later in July and then into August before they really start blooming. Purple loosestrife can look a lot like the native species fireweed. Then that's native and it's okay. So here are an example of fireweed growing right next to purple loosestrife. And you can see a little bit of the difference here on the native fireweed. The flowers are growing a little bit further away from the stem. And then it also makes these sort of rib-like structures. These are actually seed pods. Whereas purple loosestrife, it's growing right up against the stem. If you want to see a good example of fireweed, so the native species, there's a nice little patch of it in front of the pea patch by the Rest Lake Dam. So that's a good example of native fireweed. If you ever want to see purple loosestrife, you can just let me know. I have a specimen of it that is pretty good for teaching, or just take a little canoe trip through Rice Creek and I'm sure you'll see it end of July and August. But if you ever are in doubt, send me a couple pictures and ask me. So, do we have a good grasp of invasive species on the chain? I think so, but it's still a lot of work to do, and there's still a lot of work to be done. So, and I tell you this every year here, I don't want you all to be, panicking about the issue of invasive species, but I also don't want you to be complacent. I don't want you to think it's all rosy out there and that we don't need you anymore, because we do. So, invasive species, they're mostly in control because we've been really diligent about monitoring and control work. But if we stop, they'll just come back. So aquatic invasive species, they are a lifelong battle. It's easiest to catch things early. It's easy to be on top of things like we are. It's kind of when you take your foot off the gas and things start to come in bigger and stronger, that's when it's going to be a problem. So I want you all to continue to be engaged in these issues here. And I want you to know that there are a lot of things that you can do and a lot of, little easy things that you can do to help us in a big way. So most years I have really popular aquatic invasive species identification trainings that fill up every year. I usually do about 6 of them. This year, because of COVID-19, they are canceled. It's a really hands-on training, and I always encourage people to get close to me to learn how to identify plants. And so we obviously had to cancel those. So instead, I created an online training on YouTube. It's not necessarily something I want you to do in place of an in-person training. It's more like a refresher or just to get the background on it. I would still like you to attend an in-person training just to get that hands-on training, but this should do in the meantime. I know that just looking at this link, it could be probably obnoxious to try to type into your web browser. So if you want a direct link to this, please just email me, and maybe we can also put it on the Lake Association website too. The other thing I need your help with is reporting your monitoring hours. So once you know what to look for invasive species, anytime that you're out on the chain doing activities that involve looking in the water, so, cruising and looking at the shoreline, fishing, you're pulling plants off your pole, those all count as monitoring hours, and we use that as matching funds for the grants that help to fund this work. So I do have a form that you could fill out for volunteer hours. Just email me that and I can give that to you. Or if it's easier for you, if you just email me what water body you were on, how long you were out, the date, the time, things like that, how many people you were with, and then the type of boat that you were on, I can make that work as well. The other thing is that I'm always here to help you identify, anything you find in a lake. Pretty much I can look at it and try to help you. But especially if you think something's an invasive species, then I want you guys to still send me photos of the plant, or even better is bringing in a specimen for me to look at. It's easier to identify if I have it. Normally, I would just take this right from you in my office, but this year, because of the virus, the hands-free method that I have, if you're looking, this is my office right here, right through this door is my office. And if you're looking straight at the office by this visitor sign, there is a red cooler. And that's how I'm doing that no contact plant identification drop off. So this is the top of the cooler. It says plant identification drop off. And there's just a reminder here that you can put your plant in there. Just make sure it's in a container or a baggie with a little bit of water, and also include your contact information. And then I can grab it and look at it and be in touch with you about what you're looking at. So to wrap up, just want to put my contact information here for you again. You are very welcome to call me. Just know that I'm not in my actual office much these days. I'm usually out on the water. So email would be preferred right now, though if you call, I'll definitely get back to you within a day or two. Email will just be a little bit quicker. So here is all that for you. I hope to hear from you all soon, and I really hope that we can all see each other safely again in the near future. So take care of yourselves, and thank you very much.